Welcome to the evolution and future of business branding for coaches, entrepreneurs, and more. And this is a mini masterclass, and I am Majesty AliNCIOLE WOW, and I'm looking forward to bringing this mini masterclass to you today. Please make sure you have note-taking material. You're certainly going to want to jot down some of the wisdom and insight that I'm going to be providing during this time. So welcome. I'm excited to be here with you to share about such a very important topic. I want to jump right into talking about this because this is just a mini masterclass. It's more like an info training, food for thought, and just really informing you about the very nature of the evolution and future of branding in business. Now, I have been a branding and business authority for over a decade, and I've taken not only just my brand, but others through an evolutionary process of branding and business metamorphosis, and also training individuals how to start becoming actually branding evolution coaches, and why that actually is really important, especially in this era with how things are progressing. So I'm going to just jump right into talking just a little bit about the nature of this progression, and of course, why it is important to you as a coach and as an entrepreneur. And primarily, most of you who've been in this business for quite some time, and certainly if you're new to this is going to benefit you tremendously because it can put you on the right path from the start so that you can avoid a lot of the pitfalls and different plateaus that happen within, whether it is building a coaching business or building an entrepreneurial, being an entrepreneur, but focusing on the branding, which is very, very important because it's why most coaches and entrepreneurs simply don't make it. That's a chief cornerstone that often gets neglected in terms of how to develop the brand effectively. But there's so much, so much more. And again, I'm going to be, talking about this today. So one of the core fundamentals around branding and branding evolution is being able to shift from the traditional branding formats and success structures that have been offered throughout the years. Something that I have been teaching is I actually don't really teach traditional branding, even though traditional branding has different elements and components that will be kind of evolutionary as well, but just done in a very different format, very uncommon format, so to speak. So I've been teaching branding expression and being able to express your brand and empire, and doing it from a very authentic, authentic place, so that it is being able to demonstrate the whole of who you are, and not just to focus on just a particular primary area, even though you may have some specialties. But the way that the dynamics are shifting as it relates to even our life's purpose and missions is us bringing the fullness of who we are to the table. And so when you're able to be a brand expression, you are able to express yourself accordingly for whatever audience is going to need that specific area of you, during that time. And yes, you can still have a primary focus, but you just don't want to be limited there. All right. So that impacts your branding tremendously, because if you box yourself in with the traditional branding format of having some type of niche or core mission a certain way, then it's going to limit who you can serve, how you make your impact and income. And that is why most coaches and entrepreneurs struggle. They do, because there's a limitation in terms of how they can make their impact and income. And they spend a lot of time trying to develop this concept, this branding identity around who they are. And they develop products and programs and continues to keep trying to put that particular aspect out, but not understanding that sometimes things are seasonal with even in our lives, and even for people, even for the general public. And when you're able to diversify who you are with what you have to offer, you can actually be a year-round consistent type of brand, and be able to position yourself accordingly. And again, this is very important. this type of format keeps coaches and entrepreneurs out of the feast of famine. All right. But most don't know, how do I step into this? How do I actually start to brand myself, in this way? And so I'm going to share just a little bit about this, but primarily this particular mini masterclass is really, as I mentioned, is informing you about, here are the progressions, here's the evolution and the future of where the dynamics are going with branding for business, especially being in these areas. So if you're a solo entrepreneur, you are definitely going to have to diversify yourself and be able to look at what are the niches within the niches that you serve. What are different aspects and elements in your experience that you can begin to showcase to the general public in a very unique way, and have your branding represent that entrepreneurial expression of whether you are an artist, because to me, that is what brand expression is about. It's about brand artistry. And each brand will start showing up as an artist, as an expression, as a creative expression. So let me talk a little bit more about this, because again, this applies to coaches and entrepreneurs and small business owners too. There's different categories, but primarily I'm focusing on coaches and entrepreneurs. One of the main reasons why this particular shift is occurring is because from a very divine perspective, not a religious perspective, but a very divine perspective, is that, we are here to be creators and demonstrate that high level creativity and creative expression in a very unique way, almost to the point where it does seem supernatural or very divine. Again, not woo-woo, not religious. It is that we are here to demonstrate the fullness of us, a range of who we are, a multifaceted prism of who we are, but it gets showcased at different times. So it's not necessarily that it's all just happening, you're doing this everything at once. It's that you're able to step into the functionality that is going to be required. And this is what I teach even for coaches, is being cross-functional in who you are and what you do, having a cross-functional expression and being able to be the brandpreneur artistry, or the artistrypreneur of who you are. And again, the reason why this is taking place is because there's more being demanded, if you will, from us in our human experience. And in our human experience, we have to live. We're here for a purpose. And so those purposes have to be demonstrated and they have to be unleashed. And as they're being unleashed, again, there are multiple ways of how that's happening and ways that it gets demonstrated. It has to be. Can you imagine your creator only creating kind of a one note type of world with no diversity, right? Everything's just the same. No, even every flower so has a uniqueness, whether it's, a different type or however, has a uniqueness. And even though we've been taught in branding, you need to demonstrate your unique branding point of view or so. People need to know your uniqueness. But honestly, what's been happening over the years is that it's really just a sea of sameness. Yes, are people authenticating or demonstrating a certain template in their own authenticity? They are, but it still is the sea of sameness. It's just different colors. It produced a rainbow in a sense, but haven't produced the pots of gold in a sense that the rainbows lead to. And there is no distinction of the uniqueness anymore. At one point, that was playing out where people could model something or someone, a concept, in their own authenticity. And then that's being taught, that kept getting replicated in a sense to the point where it does all look and feel the same. Just a different body, but the same shirt. But when you are actually really being a fuller expression of you, there's no way that you can have a kind of a cookie cutter model. So the way that brands are going to be operating in business models too, are going to be very customized. So you're not going to see the same types of systems where you go to this website and everybody pretty much has the same system of how you subscribe to them, enroll different. You're going to see a lot of that change because the brand expression, the artistry is going to be in alignment for that person. People will not have to play to the same systems that they actually don't really feel aligned with, but they go along with it because that seems to be the thing that's in place that's working for most. And so there's going to be a breakdown of all of this. And when brands start going through a unique metamorphosis, then that's when they'll get more into their evolutionary expression. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that, really quickly. And I do have products and publications around these particular, aspects that I'm talking about, and you'll find a lot of that information will be in the description. So let me talk a little bit about really the decomposing aspect of a metamorphosis process. And that's something that's been happening even more so in the digital space and will continue because the digital space is what is dominant, and that's not going to change. But there has to be a shifting in how the functionality and how it's being used and leveraged as it relates to individual brands. So if metaphorically you think about a caterpillar process into what I call evolving into a butterfly, most people teach it from a transformational standpoint, but I teach it from an evolutionary standpoint because it becomes a completely different entity of expression when it breaks down in the chrysalis. It becomes unformed, and then it reformats to a new formation. And so what happens within the branding metamorphosis for business empires is that breakdown of a brand starts to take place. So in its caterpillar stage, which, believe it or not, I'm going to say this, even what you see in successful brands, so to speak, especially in the coaching arena and entrepreneurial arena, those are really just big caterpillars. They've actually never gone through a metamorphosis. Okay, they've had, yes, quote unquote, transformation, growth and transformation. They've had that combo, but they actually really haven't had evolution in a more expansive way. They've either been longitudinal or latitudinal, but not both. They haven't been able to have the breadth and the depth. So the transformational evolutionary experience has not been expansive enough to do what I teach. You have to be metamorphosized, evolutionized, and then ultimately optimized. And the reason why optimization isn't occurring for brands on the scale that it could is because they lack the evolution, the true evolution, of that brand. And so what starts to happen within this particular aspect or area, so to speak, is then they start marketing out of alignment. And yes, are they being successful in a sense and making a lot of money? Absolutely. But it is also costing them, let's say, on a soul level in some ways, even though it may seem like, well, divinely, this is all lining up. It must be the right thing. All right. Some things were put in place to work really just from a temporary standpoint, like a jump off. But what happens is then systems and structures get built around this and crystallized, right? Then they become like a Jericho around a wall around the Jericho, around the promised land. And it actually prevents people from getting in. Even the brands who are being successful, they've actually built a wall, and they've not had the metamorphosis that would take them beyond. Therefore, they can't teach individuals how to metamorphosize, how to go beyond. Meta is beyond, right? So they can't teach that because they haven't. Then what happens is that, yes, what they're putting out there is working for some, but for a great majority, it isn't working, right? Because it's not really part of the evolution. So then it gets into a lot of people wasting time doing processes that are not unique for them, and cookie cutter systems and formats. People giving individuals, here's what I did and here's what worked for me, and here's how you can do this and this can work for you. And it's kind of hit and miss, with some, And everything, of course, is not for everyone, but we're talking about here where there's a great majority of people who are lagging behind in their own evolution. Therefore, people are now spending time trying to do processes again to increase their business. That's simply not going to work for them, right? Because it's not being the truth of who they are in the fullness of expression. So in the breakdown and the decomposing aspect of the metamorphosis, which most of you are already in that, but you'll see a lot of that happen and play out in the marketplace, where there are different structures that were working at one point, not realizing that, okay, they're working now, not realizing you're a big caterpillar that is an imposter imposing as a butterfly. Well, part of this is because it's the ignorance around that. And so the illusion has been that you're soaring because it looks like you're successful, but you actually aren't, because those systems actually are still struggling systems, inching along, having to do guerrilla form marketing and just all unauthentic marketing, and constantly in the face of people, consistently throwing out content, it's a hard system, which a caterpillar's life is inching along. It can only see just, kind of head on, and slow progression and processes. Yes, does it ultimately get to its goal in a sense? Yes, but it typically does not go into the cocoon process to break down that old structure to become something new. So what happens is then disruptions start to take place. And that's why the decomposing starts to happen, and people don't understand, why am I not, even I was successful, I'm not being successful anymore. What's taking place? And for individuals who actually haven't really been successful in this model, that it's even, kind of more, I guess, disoriented to them in a sense. It's like, well, what is going to work? I know I was called to do this, but I just feel like nothing has worked. I listened to the gurus and there hasn't been anything. Well, again, because what has been presented is not the truth of what is here to be fully actualized in potential, right? So that's why coaching models and entrepreneurial frameworks, they don't really work long term. Not without a lot of hard grind and hustle, and then again, getting into unauthentic ways of marketing that are going to put you out of alignment, and then ultimately, just out of integrity. And again, you don't want to build success structures like that. So in this evolutionary process, a breakdown of all of this starts to happen. And again, when a caterpillar begins to lose that form, it's unformed, because it's waiting to come into the new information, the new data, to form into something new. Now, every caterpillar is encoded to become a butterfly, but every caterpillar doesn't actually become a butterfly, and for various reasons. They either don't make it through the caterpillar life, they expire before it's time, or something happens, however, and then some do enter into the chrysalis process, and they simply don't survive it. They simply don't survive it. So then they don't emerge into, these beautiful beings of a butterfly, right? And so when we see consistently in the marketplace, this is what has been taking place. And something else I get into more into other trainings that I do around this is that even when you form into what you believe is the butterfly, that's not your final form. That actually is not what you should start building your brand around either. And I know some of you are thinking like, what in the world? What is this all about? I mean, I have to come into some solidification and something that I'm solid about. And that is true. But it will be a fuller expression of you. It's rarely at this stage going to be something that you've just really narrowed down and niched down into. That is breaking down too in the decomposing factor of your new formation. So sometimes what happens is that you will form with a core, let's say, aspect of something that's signature for you, but that's meant to only play out in kind of a short window too, even if it's just a few years, all right? And for some, it'd be a few months. So this is something that I teach in the deeper aspect of branding and business metamorphosis, is that if you know anything about a butterfly, when it actually launches from its cocoon, it doesn't actually launch and fly right away. It's stuck on the cocoon, or on the outside, I should say. It's attached to it for a few hours or so, and sometimes longer, because it is now developing. It's acclimating into the new environment, in a sense, because it's been in a cocoon. So it has to get acclimated to being outside of that cocoon. And as it's getting acclimated and strengthening its body a certain way, then it prepares to take off and to start to soar, right? And start to live a butterfly life. But what happens typically when people come through a process, something they've overcome, or they then become successful in their business, they then try to take what they've done and now say, I'm going to build a brand around this. This is what's formed. This is my main thing. And then I'm going to teach people how to do what I've done. And then they build their brand around that. And that's actually not supposed to be how it's done in evolution. It's and the way that I teach it is in terms is that you write for caterpillars, you speak to butterflies, and meaning there are publications and things that you create from your journey, or different mini products that you create from your journey. But what you're here to do in a more expansive way is not going to be that. So when I say speak to, meaning speak to, who are you having your interaction, your airtime with? If you're a coach, who you're going to be coaching, you're not going to be, you're not in the evolution supposed to be coaching people who are needing a process a certain way. That's where you become a 1 or 2 steps ahead expert to the emerging. And that's a whole nother training. I'm not going to get into all that. But back to what I was saying about the butterfly. A butterfly, after it forms and it goes on to live its butterfly life, it actually does not, most don't have a long lifespan. Some live about 2 weeks, a few months. Some do go on to live a few years, but typically the lifespan is short. And so I know people think, well, wait a minute, they go through all this just to have this short life? Like, well, what does that mean in the business metamorphosis, the branding, the human aspect is, I don't want to do all this to have, kind of a short run. Well, what it is this, that no, you keep morphing into new purposes with your branding. That's why the expression piece is so critical, is because whatever your journey has been, and that you've come through that, and then you're ready to start sharing that with the world, that's going to be about a short window. Maybe I always say, no longer than 90 days should you be actually teaching something that took you some time to come through. You should be producing products around that, maybe hosting some type of mastermind initiative or so. That's kind of a short window, but you should be now, because I've evolved, because I've become this, what actually am I now? It won't be the journey. It won't be what you've actually come out of, for building something that's going to be lasting. No. So you want to just have a short window, and that's where things are going. And developing more of your multifaceted branding expression for your business empire, a lot of that you are not going to know until you clear out some of what the journey has been, and then keep seeing what is morphing now. Will it come into a more solidified format in a sense? Absolutely, it will. It will begin to crystallize in that. But typically, like I said, within that 90-day window of time of you coming out of something, that's when you need to, yes, put products together, host something, and then move on from that. Don't continue with that, because you now don't want to be identified for that. That's just a part of the expression, because there's going to be so much more. So below I have products and, different resources that you can avail yourself to learn more about this. Today was about just helping you to become more aware in terms of where the dynamics are going. And it will help you to understand why, in fact, your branding isn't moving a certain way, or for some of you, you're being successful and you can already feel like a plateau about to come, and you don't know even how to pivot at this point. But then also, for those who maybe you are successful and you're going to try to continue in that format, this is a good opportunity to give pause and examine and reflect, how long have I actually been doing what I've been doing? even though it's working, you don't want to get hit with when the ultimate digital metamorphosis happens and the decomposing stages start to take place, because then that's the worst time to be trying to learn the knowledge when it's already upon you, right? So the purpose of this mini masterclass is really for you, again, to be informed and to start looking at how are ways that I can start preparing myself now before something starts to shift. And again, I have resources, below, for that. But, ultimately, you're here to be more. And if you are a coach, this is very, very important. Again, whatever your core mission has been that you feel is your primary purpose, I can rest assure you, even what you're doing now is not the fullness of it. Even if you're being successful with it, it will come to a halt in a sense, because the beyond the cocoon aspect needs to happen. And that's going to take place in the branding and you learning how to brand yourself in a cross-functional way, as an expression. And again, I have, resources that will help you, be able to do that. And so then you see your business empire not only just become a soaring butterfly, but it will become an eagle and beyond. What I do teach in the new creation process is that once you metamorphosize would be considered, that's the butterfly of your expression. The evolution is the eagle of your expression. And then the optimization is more like the mythical bird, the phoenix. That's what's illuminate. That's what the marketplace is going to be more gravitated to in that truer format and state, of who you are. And that will be more of a fuller potential. That's more of the prism of who you are. And you want the different multifacetedness and it's the evolution, the expression of who you are, to come forth. So I'm going to encourage you as a call to action is to, take this coming week to sit down and examine your brand, examine where you have tried to crystallize an identity and you really aren't coming into the fullness. You're really not expressing the fullness of who you are, and sort of exploring that and asking, where do I need to start with this expression? And also being able to kind of, I don't want to say future forecast in a sense, but you do need to get a sense of what's emerging for you. And I always tell people, you have two tribes. One that you're currently serving, there's always an emerging tribe, but actually there's more tribes that you're here to serve. And that's something, again, within the evolution you will find for your entrepreneurship and for your coaching business. And again, whether small business owners, you're going to find that the diversity is going to be key to you being able to be a full expression for impact and income, how you make a higher level or just take things to a higher level, but it's a more expansive level. So again, I have resources. Please avail yourself to those resources in the description. They're going to help you with your branding evolution, your branding expression, and also too, just being able to go through the metamorphosis and at least get a jump start. And there'll also be some other, videos that you can learn more about that particular aspect and get out ahead so that you can be fully prepared. So I hope that this mini masterclass has been beneficial to you and that you will take what I've shared and be able to find a place of resonance and to simply get started and moving forward. And again, hopefully this gave you some clarification and understanding, just kind of a taste of what is emerging, what's progressing, and again, what you can do so that you can make sure that you come into the evolution and that you can have a more expansive future for your coaching business, your entrepreneur expression. You want to be in the panoramic view. And what I mean by that, you are no longer a caterpillar inching along, seeing head on. Butterflies and eagles, they have a panoramic view. They see from a more expansive perspective because they know how to be both ascended and grounded. A caterpillar can only be grounded. It can't fly. And even if it gets up high, it had to crawl an inch along to get to that point. And that's a long journey. When you're in the soaring mode and you're in your more evolutionary expression, then again, you can see different possibilities. You can see different aspects. You're able to, again, be grounded and ascend. So earthbound and in flight. And when you're a phoenix, when you're optimized, then that's when you're able to do the supernatural and impossible through your expression. All right. So again, avail yourself to what's in the description, and I am wishing you the absolute best. Take care and stay blessed.